All right. Welcome back to the Sales and Profit Strategies, Sales and Profit Show here with Mike Muller and Drew Sutton. Today we're talking software as a service and licensing. In the Sales and Profit Strategies, we go through different products and talk about how to create sales strategies for them so that you can be a success on the revenue and sales front. All right. Here we have Drew Sutton. That's me, of course, your host, and then Mike Muller, my co-host, and honestly mentor when it comes to sales related activities. So Mike, welcome to the show. For the folks that don't know you, here's a couple rapid fire questions for you. What's your favorite sales tool and why?
Favorite sales tool? Oof. I mean, the internet is a gob of things, but a very broad stroke. But I would say dialing it down, LinkedIn is phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you use LinkedIn?
Dialing it in, there's so many tools that LinkedIn holds with inside of itself. On the surface, it's just another social media platform if you look at it in those glasses. But the tools that it has within there, the ability to, you know, get below the layers, and I mean the AI capabilities, the filtering capabilities, the market research capabilities, the C-suite level. It's all in how you use the tool. I mean, at the end of the day, a screwdriver is a screwdriver. If you let it on the desk, it's just a screwdriver, but you can put it to work. And that's how LinkedIn works for me, is using it for what it's intended to be and maximizing its capabilities and honestly pushing it to its limits and upsetting it. But it's really getting in there and using what's presented to you and knowing how it works is the key.
No, I love that. I think that one of the early conversations that you and I had on sales, you were helping me develop a list and you were able to dig into LinkedIn in ways that I didn't know was possible. So yeah, I think LinkedIn is great. Do you pay for the premium subscription? Is it worth it?
I do. I believe it is worth it, because there's so much spam associated, obviously, with any social networking platform. But when you approach your targets, if you will, you've the tools that lie within LinkedIn allow you to make your approach personable, less spammy, rinse and repeat, copy and paste message to the same targeted vertical individuals, where you can actually get personal level, hit on a key that will actually get them to open the message and odds are reply.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think I've let this is supposed to be rapid fire. Get to know Mike. Mike, what is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten from in sales?
Best piece of advice?
Yeah.
Best piece of advice. There's been a lot of them. Sales is peaks and valleys. It's what you do in the valleys that determine your next peak.
Ooh, that's good.
Cliche, but it is so true.
So Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great, he wrote another book which is not really celebrated very much, and it's called Great by Choice. And one of the things he says is if you look at a graph with like two axes like this, right? If you put a good return and a bad return, so your return on this axis, and you put good luck and bad luck. So a lot of us, we talk about luck and probability sets, which is really just luck, right? He said that it's not really very impressive to get a good return on good luck. So like if the market goes up, rising tide raises all ships, right?
Yeah.
Or if the market drops and you also go down, that just describes the tide. It doesn't describe you. But what great people aim for is to get a good return on bad luck, which is kind of what you're saying is it's the activities you do in the slump that really determines your success on that rise.
And there was when I was in a sales manager role early on in my career, I actually heard it and stole it from the NCAA March Madness, of all things. It was watching a game, and it was the ball recognizes the hustle.
Ooh, the ball recognizes the hustle. I like that.
So even though it's an inanimate object, obviously it's a basketball. It's solely based on the skill set of the individual using it. They were referring to the fact that the ball recognizes all the work you're doing in the background. And I applied that to my sales teams. I said, the ops recognize the hustle. If you're putting in the work, if you're making the calls, if you're doing the follow-ups, they're going to fall in your favor. You have to be 1% better than what your competition's doing, because if your competition's sending out the initial invites, emails, sending the occasional ping, are you doing more than them?
Yeah. Yeah.
If
So
you're
go ahead.
that's what I said. It's that you keep hustling on the opportunities that you know are in the pipeline. They are going to fall in your favor. But if you sit there and expect them to just fall without any work, it's not going to happen. Somebody else is going to come in. Your competition is going to work harder than you. So you always have to outwork your competition.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Another book that I love, actually, the author is Nassim Taleb. He wrote The Black Swan and Skin in the Game. And in Skin in the Game, he talks about this weird thing that has happened because of the internet. And that's that he calls it there's extremistan. So it used to be that there was like a natural distribution. Like if you were a singer and you were the best singer in your county, then folks would come to you and you would make an okay living singing for the folks in your town. But now we live in a world in which Taylor Swift exists, or Beyonce, or Drake, or whoever you think is the best.
Yeah.
And they are really only 1 or 2% better than the local singer who's really well. But they get all the sales because of distribution.
Yeah.
So, and that's the same thing in a pro ball game. Everybody in pro ball is a pro athlete, but it's the 1 or 2%. It's the ball respects the hustle. And that's the world that we live in, is that all of the rewards go to the slightly the best. And so getting to be, yeah, I love it. I think it's fantastic. Okay. So you've been a success in sales. I know that you helped Big S Fans grow their sales over years and years and years. And then you've kind of moved on to a couple other companies and done the same. What is it? How do you look at sales differently that's given you success? So like here I am, let's say that I'm 23, just got out of school, and I'm like, hey, I want to go sell some stuff. And so I start selling. What is your mindset that's different, that's given you the success as opposed to the young 23-year-old that
Avoid at all costs being a sales robot. It's
Okay.
easy. It's easy to fall into that. I mean, 23 is a stretch. I think I got started in sales earlier than that. But first thing you do at your inside sales job is they hand you what? A script.
Yeah.
Mm.
Not a script fan, huh?
I can tell you in my sales careers, I can sit in an office, whether it's been pharmaceuticals, whether it's been industrial, whether it's been software, whatever it is. I can tell you who's script-based selling and who's not. And who's not script-based selling is successful, because when you get into a script, you have a start and stop button. Anything outside of that start and stop button is panic mode, and there's nothing, because the script is, don't get me wrong, there's positives to the script. You have to hit the key points of the product that you're selling, targeted to the customer that you're selling to. I get it, but you can't be a robot.
Yeah.
Successful sales is not robotic. It's relationship. It's listening to your customer. If you go in and read a script, start to finish, and look up, your customer is like, it doesn't allow you to put in opportunities to get objections. Like, give me an objection. If I'm just telling you this, and stop, I haven't stopped and allowed for conversational dialogue. I can't get a feedback on where you sit. If I'm buzzing through my pitch without asking you questions conversationally, conversational selling. I mean, that's it. That's the basis of it.
So I love your thoughts on this. I say when I train sales folks that you have to rock and roll. And what I mean by that is you have these rocks, which are these points in the sales script. And generally they're like objection points. So in real estate, there's the 6%, like you have to justify why I'm paying you 6% on this $1 million house, right? I don't want to pay you that. Why would I pay you that? Would you take 4? So that argument or that conversation comes up in most relationships in a real estate context. So you have to know that conversation is coming, and you have to have a couple of hard arguments pre-set up for that conversation. But then in between those, you have to be able to fluidly roll between those points, not like a script. So like there's concepts in the script, which are the rocks, but you have to be able to roll around in there. and jump. Kind of the floor is lava. You have to be able to jump from one rock to the other. What are your? Is that it? Would
And I
you?
think it's totally true because it allows you to, you know, this is kind of a twofold question. There's a lot of pieces inside of this one. You've
Yeah,
opened
yeah,
up Pandora's box, but 90% of selling is solving a problem. And that's also informing that customer that they're unaware of that problem, that it even exists. And just by having those conversations, of just open, like, what are you using now? If I'm selling a product or a service or a piece of equipment,
yeah.
and we're using X, Y, and Z, well, how's that working out for you? It's good. Would there be any areas that you could, if you could improve upon it, what would it be? And just listen to them talk. They may not have any problems, but you might pick up a few pieces of the puzzle that you can apply to your product, your service, or whatever you're pitching to that customer. Just say, hey, this is what we do. This is how ours works. I think you might like it better.
Yeah, I like that. And that's in the rocks. The reason I advocate the rock and roll concept is because not every customer enters the conversation with your sales script. Some
No.
customers may enter and they may say, "Why do I need a realtor at all?" Another customer might say, "My cousin's a realtor." Another one might enter immediately with the, "Well, will you give me the lowest commission or the lowest fee rate?" And for some, not every customer needs every objection answered or is trying to accomplish the
No.
thing. So it's your job to memorize all of that whole area of conversation and then listen, and then not just be like, "Oh, I know the answer to this one," and then like throw a rock at their head.
Well, also, too, if you don't know the answer to it, don't lie about it.
Ooh, that's good. The old, the old be a decent person trick. Listen to that.
Well, I mean, if you expect to sell anything to anybody and they shoot holes in your credibility in your first meeting, they're never going to buy from you. If you don't know the answer or you don't have an answer, be honest and say, hey, you know what? I'm not sure of that one, but I'll get it back to you. And the first thing you do when you in that sales call, whether you may not get the sale at that point, but at least you've got your foot in the door. This is where they're testing your credibility. Unbeknownst to them, they're testing your credibility. Make that phone call to somebody that does know that answer, or shoot that email, and guess what? You just got your second follow-up call with that customer. They're gonna be like, okay, so he was listening. He got me an answer. Now I'm gonna give him 5 more minutes to see what he's got, or she.
Yeah, I like that. I heard somebody else say it a little bit differently, but I like the way you put it. The way that I'd heard it was the sales conversation is a conversation, and a good conversationalist wants to make the conversation as long and as pleasant as possible. Right? Like we're having an interaction. It's not me delivering a sales call to you. It's me listening to what you have to say and then adding useful value to you. And then kind of what is, if you pair this idea in there, it's not, most customers are not willing to buy when you meet them, right? Like maybe 1 or 2% are ready to buy right now. So what you're doing is you're building a relationship, being a decent person, being the person they can trust, because at some point they need an oil change, but they don't need it right now. They need it in 5,000 miles. And so letting them know, hey, when you need that oil change, I'm a safe person that's going to take care of you.
Bingo.
That's and that's the purpose of the conversation. Like I used to hate small talk. I'm an engineer. I'm a recovering engineer. I used to hate small talk. I wanted to get into deep stuff really quickly. And I didn't realize that a huge portion of life is us talking about the weather to see if you're good at conversation and you can be trusted with information. Or when you ask me about the weather, am I going to jump in and just like drag the conversation out for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
So just demonstrating trust and carrying that conversation out is great.
Well, I mean, and to spoon roll off that, I mean, it's like you're starting a relationship with somebody and you expect them to marry you after the first conversation.
Mm,
It's like,
right.
are we good, or let's go ahead and solidify this deal? It's like, no, you're building a relationship. Now, don't get me wrong. I've had some where I walk in and knock it out of the park, and it's like perfect timing, and it worked, and I brought in what they needed. It just was stars were aligned, but that's few and far between. Most of it is relationship building. I mean, that's your first date, and that's why your script selling doesn't allow you to read the room. Because if you can't read the room and somebody's sitting there just like, what are they talking about still? Because stuck in your robotic phase, they're not. Good luck getting back in there. It's not going to happen. It's just I hate to break it to you.
Yeah. Because if you can't read the room in the conversation, then after I buy your services, are you just going to keep ramming your service down my throat, whether or not it's a good service or the right? No, well, I guess the right service. Like I'm sure that what you're selling is great, but is it the right service for me, or are you listening to my actual needs?
No, and it was extremely noticeable in my pharmaceutical stint. You could see who had a robotic plan from the minute they walked in that door to the minute they left. It was walk in, ask for the doctor, check the samples, get a signature, walk out. I can tell you how many times those individuals went to President's Club. They didn't, because they disregarded the front desk. They didn't ask how their day was doing. They didn't go to the MA to see how everything was going with your product, how the doctor's doing with it. Are they having any issues? Don't even ask about the doctor. If you go in there to ask for the doctor, you've just shot yourself in the foot. You're never going to get it. Never going to get it. But if you become relationship with everybody in that office, relational, they know you, you know them, and they know that you honestly care.
Yeah.
Guess what happened?
So,
President's Club.
yeah. So how do you manage the crossover? So let's say that so for those that don't know, Mike does some sales consulting on the side, referral only. If you would like to get with Mike, you can jump on the podcast here. Of course, reach out to him on LinkedIn. Let's say that I'm missing my targets, my revenue targets for this quarter, for this year, whatever. Let's just say for the quarter, and I need to ramp up some sales. I'm a young sales guy, or I just have a young sales organization. So we have the tension of I'm hungry, like I need bread today. I need to go out and kill the antelope, and building relationships. Where's how do you balance that tension? Do you have any advice on that?
Don't hit the panic button. You're new.
Okay.
You have no reason to panic. This is sales. It takes time. It's not a flip of a switch. And if you have good management and good senior level staff, use them as a resource. They're there typically for a reason. They were good at what they did. And like most sales managers, it's the accidental sales manager, which we've talked about. It's like, you're great at sales. You're going to become a manager and teach everybody what you know without management training. Go get them.
Yep.
And that works for some people because they get what they're in their role for. Okay. What did I do that worked for me? And how can I help these younger sales reps be better than me?
Yeah.
Because somebody's going to have the ability that you didn't. You can show them what you did and allow that to happen. So as a young person coming in, you're not getting your yeses, you're just getting a bunch of no's. It's like, okay, what am I doing? And what can I do differently? Because, there's the old adage, and what is it? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yep.
Well, if you're in sales and you're doing the same thing over and over and over again and being told no, well, guess what? It's probably time to try a new tactic, and that's reaching out, saying, hey, I'm struggling here. What worked for you here? You don't have to adapt it verbatim, but look at what you've got. Look at what they presented to you, and how can we blend that in to try something different? Maybe it's your pitch. Maybe it's who you're targeting isn't the right person. Maybe you need to start at a different angle of attack. Like there's different many ways to skin the sales cat. It's just being open to change and trying something new. And I can tell you how many times I've gone to the guys that have been in these roles before me and say, hey, I'm struggling here. Like, what do you do differently? What would you try here? And it even bring them in to say, hey, would you mind going in on this call with me so I can see how you kind of handle some of this stuff? Let's tag team it. I'm going to lead. You jump in, and it's teamwork. Back to your point earlier. The tide raises all ships, right?
Yeah.
So guess what? You win, I win, the company wins. Let's go help me out here. I'm going to learn, and then we're going to get better at it together.
No, I love that. In engineering, engineers are known for being introverts, right? I remember when I very first started a job, this old guy, there's three of us that started together, And this old guy came by first day and he said, "Hey, I'm going for coffee. Anybody want to go for coffee?" And something in my soul said, "You're going for coffee." And, I just moved to a new city. I had a young family. I was trying to be very Dave Ramsey, very save the money, don't go for coffee type of a guy. So the other two guys were like, no. And they kind of like looked at the old boomer and they like glared at him and they were like, weird old guy. No, we don't want to go for coffee. But something in my spirit said, yeah, you need to go. So I went. And that year, his name was Brad. That year I spent $4,000 in coffee, like going with Brad almost twice a day. And a lot of people picked on me. They're like, man, you need to do some work. You don't need to be out there with Brad. Well, the backstory there is Brad personally had 105 patents in helicopter design. He's a sharp dude. And in addition to the patents he had, I never once, well, maybe like 6 times, I would be like, hey, I was thinking about this idea. And he would pull up old files from like from like 1996 where he'd already kind of drawn the same sort of an idea. So he became my mentor and taught me. So he like skyrocketed my career, both politically, like within the organization. Like I got to meet a bunch of people. He would introduce me to people. But also like from a brain perspective, he'd be like, no, you're looking at it wrong. Look at it this way. And it was just like a 180-degree out of phase shift. It wasn't even like look at it backwards. It was like, think about this in a completely different way. And because of all the coffee that I bought, which I kind of considered my tuition, I ended up getting 30 patents and skyrocketed in just a couple of years to somebody that was of value in the organization. Yeah. People came to me and I got to do some fun projects. So I spent the money and I spent the time with a guy, but I definitely got the better end of the deal out of that. So yeah, reaching out to your mentors and your bosses, that's why they're there. If they're good leaders, right, is they want you to be a success, because that's how they make more money too.
Exactly. And they want you to reach out. I mean, that's
yeah.
There's micromanaging and there's managing. Like,
yeah.
And you know the difference between somebody that wants you to do better and somebody that's just not a good manager.
Yeah. And having been a manager myself now too, I would love to mentor everybody that's ever worked for me, but not everybody wanted to be mentored by me, which is totally fine. Like Drew's not the center of the universe here. That's not what I'm saying though is, as I'm looking for folks for the next promotion or for the next cool job, I look for the folks that raise their hand, right? Because the ones that raise their hand are committed to growing and they're humble enough to raise their hand. So in addition to it benefiting you, then you're indicating, oh, I'm willing to be taught and I want to learn. And that's super great for a boss. One closing comment from you, and then we're going to go to the second portion of the show here. Any clothing? Okay.
I thought you were going to ask me one.
Oh, no. All right. All right. Well, for those that have joined late, this is the Sales and Profit Strategies show. This is where Mike and I talk about ways to make money and to make sales. We go through different products and discuss the best ways to sell those products. So now this portion of the show, we're going to talk about how to sell software and licensing. So you got a product that you have wide distribution on. It's the software product, not a physical product. How do you make money? How do you sell software and licensing? All right. So Mike, this is over to you. What is your best advice for selling software?
It's with anything, software's tough because odds are they have 2, 3, or 4 different softwares currently in place that are kind of doing the same thing. And if you have a software that does the same stuff, that's a tough sell. Well, we've got this, and this. It kind of does the same thing.
Yeah.
How much are those costing you? If you've got 4 things that are doing independent, but they all kind of blend together to help your day-to-day operations run, but you have a one point of contact software that does all of those, maybe a little more expensive, but on the backside, it's going to save you money. Because at that point, a lot of the companies that you dig into and look at what they're operating on and how they're operating, there's redundancy, and that redundancy equals dollars wasted.
Yeah. Because I literally just had this in my own life. I have this one product that I really, really like. And then I have another product, which I like part of it. And I'm paying essentially the same amount for both of them. But the one this number B here, which I only like part of it, I'm paying another half of the cost of that software to duplicate my CRM. Is that's the duplication for me in this case? Is they're both softwares. This one I love, and this one I love a piece of, but I'm paying for the duplication, the overlap. So I ultimately just canceled that one actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. What are you getting, and what are you duplicating is a great point. Something else that I run into is I did agile software. Have you ever done a full agile software development program?
I'm not.
So they had this really cool idea called user stories. And I think that you as a sales guy might appreciate this. A user story is where I go and I talk to the users, the actual users of the software, not the CEO I'm selling to, not my CEO, not my developers. I go over to Andrea,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
accountant who's actually using the software. And I say to them, hey, Andrea, when you're doing this thing, what does that feel like? What makes you happy? And I just listen for a good portion of time. And we fill out these user stories. And the rules for a user story is it can only be one feature. It has to be in the end user's vernacular, and it has to describe not not the detailed technical process to solve it, but what the experience of solving it would be. So, like a good user story might be um, when I pull up the accounting software, I want it to automatically load the last client I was working with. Now, that may not be for every organization, but like for this specific for Acme Accounting Incorporated, that's the thing that they do every time, right?
Yeah.
Or for the police, whenever I type in somebody's license plate, I want these 6 pieces of information to pop up right away. And by getting those user stories, you have something to develop to, and you know that your product is going to be great when you start it. So, um, what are your thoughts on creating user stories and selling software?
Well, I think user stories are the key to not just software sales. It's pretty much, can be the common thread amongst all sales. I mean, your key point there is that you're listening to the users, not the decision makers up in the top suite that don't speak
Mm,
that language, that aren't using it day in and day out, but they're seeing the results of it being used day in and day out. And I think we talked last time is that there's a disconnect from each step in the process. Like the reps tell the managers one thing, the managers tell the executive C-suite another, and the reps talk amongst themselves in a different language that they don't tell the managers. So it's like getting to cut that out and just getting non-biased feedback is crucial. How can I make this better for them? And building off that to where when you can walk in and say, this is not only going to help your users at the entry level, it's going to help the flow across the entire process to where the results that they're seeing at the top level, they're like, wow, this is working great. They don't know why it's working great, but you do.
So, but the decision makers have their own metrics, right? Like the decision maker has a P&L statement that they're responsible for, and they have morale that they're responsible for. So, how do you, as a sales guy, go in and listen to the lowest level user, listen to your team, and also listen like what do you care about from the decision? Because they're the one that's going to
Yeah.
approve the buy. So, how do you get them to approve a buy when you've got designed a program or a software that's for the lowest level person?
You show them the critical points that are going to be impactful to them and how those critical points are impacted by what you're doing at that interface level. This is going to, whether it's efficiency, whether it's dollars spent versus dollars earned, there's multiple ways because you have to figure out what's important to not just the user level but the C-suite level as well. Like what is impactful for you? What's going to make the most important? What's going to make that decision making process flip that switch for them to say, this is probably going to work.
Hmm.
This is better than what we're doing now. And again, each one's going to be different, and you get your standard. At the end of the day, the bottom line is the factor. Or you actually see some that maintain a lot of that level of importance on customer satisfaction. we can streamline our operation, improve profits, and still be impactful to our customers. Yeah, it's a no brainer. And I think that's tough to find a lot, but when you really do get down to it and see that there is still customer care at the top of the board, that's that's impactful for me selling the solution to know that what I'm doing is affecting all stages of the process.
Yeah. I kind of got lost in your answer there. Like I enjoyed it. I had another question queued up in my head. I got lost in the answer there. Here's a question I'd like to kind of hear you debate on for a second. This was said to me by a young CEO about 8 years ago. He said, "I'm never buying a software unless it removes a job," which is like very politically incorrect, so to speak. But his point was, when I buy a software, I'm increasing my monthly costs, right? And that needs to reduce monthly costs.
Yeah.
So, but there's a human cost there potential. So, have you thought about that much? What are your thoughts on?
That was my first job in managed IT sales. This
Yeah.
was in the I'd say early 2000s, probably mid 2000s. I was still like managed IT service. At that point, it wasn't inherently known, and my customers, I mean, if I believe you said you did that for a little while. I mean, you're
Mhm.
young and you're in the sales ring and you're making calls, and we've got somebody that handles that. Okay. Well, are they handling this, this, and this, and this, and this? I don't know. But we've got somebody that handles that. So basically, what they're saying is that my service would eliminate their job. Well, let's go beyond that. What are their qualifications as that person? Can they protect you from X, Y, and Z? Well, it's so and so's cousin who's got a degree and he knows computers. She knows computers. Well,
That's
if you're a
very
manager at a bank and somebody knows computers, how protected are your customers? What's the cost in that? Yes, we would essentially be replacing that person, but at the same time, my spin on that was when they would direct, well, let me talk to your IT specialist. Well, I'm talking to the guy that I'm essentially replacing.
yeah, yeah.
That's a bad conversation, or is it? I say, hey, you know
Okay.
what? I know you know your stuff, but I'm going to make you look a lot better because I know that there's certain things that you can do and there's certain things that you're not capable of. And if you're telling me you can, you're lying to me because I know you can't. But
I
with this, you can present this to the board who doesn't speak tech. They don't speak director of information technology, but they were looking for somebody that does. And I can give you a package to say, you can stay on board. I can make you look like a hero, and it's only going to cost them this.
I love that. I call that the scale sale. So what you're saying is you're coming to the person that you're going to replace, so to speak, and you're not saying, "Hey, I'm replacing you." What you're saying is the next level of your business requires you to either buy another one of you. So your name's Jim. We need now Bob in order to go to from 50 employees to 100 employees. But I'm in now empowering. So my software should be empowering the people. If you're having a conversation where you're replacing people, I think you're in the wrong conversation.
Yeah.
I think what you need to be saying is this is going to allow you to scale, either in for instance, in cybersecurity, it's going to allow you to scale in solving problems and covering risk that's currently not covered. So you're reducing risk. And then also because you have this software, you can now take care of 50 endpoints or 100 endpoints or 200 endpoints per person. And that, so you're reducing future costs, right? As the business naturally scales. I think that's a great positioning. And I think this is what we hate about salespeople is that, the salesperson is trying to take my money and give me no real value. Whereas really fun sales is when you're saying, listen, I'm really going to smooth out your transition. I do business coaching as a majority of the work that I do, right? And there's a cost to it, but it is 1/8 of the cost of hiring a full-time person,
Yeah.
with my skill level. And I am going to, because I'm working with you, I'm going to make you better. And so you're going to be able to scale your organization. You're going to get back your time. You're going to make more money. And I have a track record of that. So you're not eliminating current positions. You are preparing for the next step and you're making the next phase easier. Are there any other good sales points that you would go with? Let's say, let's step away from IT a little bit, because IT has a big safety component, risk
Yeah.
management component. Let's say that we're going to sell a either a program management software or a supply chain software. So like an inventory software or a program management software. How would you? And I realize that like this is like literally, I'm just throwing this at you here. How would you
No,
go?
and I think it comes back. I mean, if you're a good salesman, you can have anything thrown at you and find a way to spin it. But
Yeah, yeah.
no, I mean, it all comes down to accepting the fact that there's maybe a better way of doing things than the way we've done it for the past 20 years,
Mm,
especially when it comes to process program management. I mean, we don't use fax machines that much anymore. Why?
mhm,
Because somebody said, "Hey, I've got a better option than a fax. Let me introduce you to this thing called email." But I mean, there's pushback on everything. It's modernization, it's streamlining. You've got to show the value. Why would I switch? If you don't have a value, just walk in and say, "Hey, this is it. What's better than what I'm doing now?" "Well, I'm not really sure, but I'm telling you it is." No, you have to know what your customer, whether it's software, whether it's equipment, whatever it is, you have to do your homework before you walk in, because your value prop has to be impactful to them and to their operation. If you don't have that, it's not going to be impactful. They're not going to feel it and be like, he made a good point there. We might be able to run a little more efficient with that in our process. We might be able to increase productivity with that in our day to day. That might help us put a little more in the green at the end of each quarter. But if you don't have that homework in, you're just walking in blind. Like, good luck. Like, there's elevator pitches, and then there's good elevator pitches.
mhm.
I mean, I've strategically waited outside an elevator for a physician just to have my elevator pitch, because I had done my homework. Was I stalking them? A little bit,
A little
but I
bit.
knew their routine. I knew when they left their rounds. I knew what elevator their office was on, and I had it ready. I knew what they were using, and wasn't going to corner, like bang, 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 bang. Walked in. "Hey, doctor, how you doing? Hey, I don't know. I know we've met a few times in the past. I'm with so and so. Have you ever thought about using it before?" "No." And then they talk why. Perfect. Please give me an objection. I can give you one reason why you should. Just something that curtails to your daily operation and your process flow that may increase patient outcomes. And you can relate that to anything.
I think that's beautiful. I think seeing objections as your key sales tool instead of as your roadblock.
I pray for objections. And if you know your product, you love objections because you have an answer to every single one of them.
That is so. I have another friend. He does a thing called Focus, and he helps companies build momentum. And he's one of his things. He says concerns. So in his life, he's in the operations side, not in the sales side. And he said you got to change your mindset from concerns are a problem to concerns are the fuel of innovation.
Yeah.
And in this case, objections are the fuel of sales. I love that.
I mean, if you don't get an objection, you're not asking the right questions or you're not listening,
Yeah.
which goes back to our first point, robotic.
Right. Yeah. So another great example of this, and this is probably one of my favorite one from antiquity here is, by antiquity, I mean the 1970s. There's a fellow named Bruce Henderson. He started the Boston Consulting Group, BCG. It's an amazing firm. And he used to, when he was a 20 something, he would go around and he would ask CEOs at events, he would say, what are your costs? And then in the 70s, there was really, you got to realize in the 70s, there was not the inventory system. Like it was paper. There was not the massive systems that we have today. And so people in that question would catch because they were, as a CEO, you should know that answer. But the truth is that most CEOs didn't know that answer. And so because he knew his market really well, he had a couple of questions, and that was his favorite one. What are your costs? That like stuck with them. And they were like, well, nobody really knows their costs. And he'd be like, well, I can help you answer that question. But it was all because he knew his market super well and he did his research on that market. Very cool. Okay. So we're coming up here to 40 minutes. All right. So you have some software. What about costs, implementation costs? How do you get over the objection of implementation cost? How do you address it and bring it up that, hey, like you're going to buy my service, but then there's also this inertia because your current, timekeeping system I'm going to have to move over all of your database. How do you manage the inertia of all that background work?
I mean, that comes with the growth of change. I mean, you look at the Office 365 migration that pretty much affected everyone. You didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
It takes time to update systems. I mean, that's the unfortunate aspect of technology and increasing. Going from prime example, my last company I was with, we didn't have a CRM, and I wanted that input ASAP because we didn't know who our customers were. I mean, we did, but we had to go back to either the whiteboard or the Excel file, and then finding out where they're located is a whole nother process. So it's like, okay, if we have all this at our fingertips in a CRM, yes, it's going to take time, probably weeks on end, to update stuff that's not even digitized, that we have to digitize to upload into the system versus Excel files into the system. It's going to take time and it takes money, but what it's saving in the long run is the ability to have efficiency when you're customer facing. Because it came up to us, we had $8 million account on the table that we knew that's what it was worth, if not more. And they said, we want to go see your system in action. Do you have any close to us here in the Ohio area? Without that CRM, it would have been, yes, let us get back to you. But the fact that we could sit there while on the call, yes, we have 8 around you within a 25-minute drive.
Yeah.
So
no, I like that.
What's it costing you versus what is it ultimately costing you?
Yeah. I had an organization that we implemented an ERP system. So that means that all of our accounting, all of our invoicing, all of our work instructions, everything was all now wrapped up into an enterprise level software. And the sell for that was the comment of friction or transaction. So if you just took like a Post-it note and I were to hand you a Post-it note and you were sitting next to me, I just handed you this Post-it note, there's a handoff there, right? Mm-hmm. I had to write the handoff. I had to give it to you. Then the data in that handoff, you might have to transcribe and write a different sticky note and then give it to another person. And pretty quickly in a manufacturing environment or in a IT companies are manufacturing environments as well. They just manufacture software or information, whereas, you can make helicopter parts. Anyway, his comment was that most of our products have between 2,000 and 3,000 handoffs. We were a very large, we made helicopters. It's kind of like making cars. There's lots of travel from station to station.
Yeah.
And so if every one of those handoffs costs you 30 seconds, it starts to skyrocket in the cost, right? So having it in an ERP system, so this is kind of what you were just describing. You really have to help your customers understand the cost the hidden costs that they're currently paying to do the thing that your software does automatically.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we are running up against our time slot. Any final thoughts from you on selling software as a service?
Listen to the customer.
Listen to the customer.
Avoid being a robot and pray for objections.
There you go. There's your bonus thoughts for selling software. Listen to the customer. And you said, listen to the customer, love objections. And what was the last one?
That was it. It was listen to the customer and pray for objections. If they're not giving you, don't look at objections as a hurdle. Don't.
Fall in love with objections. I love it. Okay. Well, that is it. That's the show. This has been the Sales and Profit Show with Mike and Drew. Tune in next week as we talk about our next product. And with that, we are out.